Beruchim Aba'im. Tonight's session, I'd like to digress for a moment from our normal venue of Parashat HaShavua and delve into a more basic question that must be clarified. We hear many times the concept called Torah. And I ask you tonight, what is Torah? Most people will tell you that it's an instruction manual. It's a book of laws. Every religion has their own form of legislation. Our form of legislation is called a Torah. It comes from the word hora'ah, which means instruction. And in it you'll find 613 mitzvot. It's a law book. There are 365 don'ts, 248 do's, and that's the extent of their understanding of what Torah is. And that's what they understand that scholars spend all day long, reading Gemara, reading Halakha, in order to come to clarity in these laws, because they're not easy laws. A lot of them are intricate. And every little detail changes the whole law. So they're just studying cases and cases and cases and cases. So when the question rises, what are we supposed to do in this law? Oh, we learned it. Gemara over here. Halakha over here. This Rishon says this, that Rishon says that. So it's a study in law. That is a very small and limited explanation of what Torah is. The Zohar says, Istakel be'oraita ubara alma. That Borei Olam looked into the Torah and created the world. You see, the Zohar is telling us that the Torah is not merely a law book, but it is the blueprint of creation. You all seen blueprints before of buildings. Whatever is in the blueprint must be in the building. As a matter of fact, if you want to know where the bathroom is and you can't find it in the building, but if you go back to the blueprint, you could trace it. Go straight, 2 doors, make a right, make a left, there it is. Then you go back in the building and you'll find it. If it's in the blueprint, it's in the building. How do I know? Because it's with that blueprint that the builder used to build the building. He's just following a map. Put this over here, add that over here, extend that over there. So now we're learning something much more deep. That means anything you see in this world, anything, on any topic, on any subject, must be in the Torah. Because if it's here, it had to be there. God started with the blueprint. It said in the blueprint grass. So let's put grass. It said in the blueprint sky. Put sky. But wait, those are basic things. It said in the blueprint medicine. Isn't there medicine in the world today? There's a whole study. People go to college for years to study medicine. Well, if there's a study of medicine, it's got to be in the blueprint. That means the cure to every disease, including Barminan, the Mahala that they still didn't figure out how to cure. It's in the Torah. The insulin that a diabetic must take to regulate his blood sugar, that cure is in the Torah. And if you know how to use it and find it, you'll see it. Based on this, the Torah is a very, very great commodity. You're actually holding the blueprint of creation. If you could access all this information out of the Torah, you're the most powerful man in the world. You know the answer to everything. Hence, we go to Gedolim with all our problems. Now you say, what does a rabbi know about business? What does a rabbi know about buying and selling? What does he know about medicine? What does he know about psychology? What does he know about geometry? What does he know about physics? If he knows one subject, he knows it all. Torah is all-encompassing. If he masters Torah, he has mastered every subject under the sun. But only one difference. He has the emet. He not only mastered the subject, but he has the truth. You can have people in college that are studying the same subject that are making mistakes, left and right. Hazon Ish, as far as I know, never went to medical school. Never officially studied medicine, but many times when people came to him for advice, he was able to give them the most precise and accurate medical advice that even the doctors were amazed at such a man's wisdom. On one occasion, he actually drew a picture, a diagram, and step by step gave the doctor how the operation must be made. When the doctor saw it, he said, it's brilliant, it's ingenious. Where did you get this from? He says, Hazon Ish. He says, I can't believe it. It's impossible for somebody to have such accuracy in that part of the body without going to school. And the doctor followed the procedure, and it didn't come out good. There were complications. And the fellow came back to the Hazon Ish, and the Hazon Ish said, you didn't follow. He said, he did. And they went back to the doctor and said, yes, step number 7, I changed, I did this. He said, there you go. If you would have followed, it would have happened okay. So you see the Hakamim possess such a wisdom in every field. And we have that Torah, it's ours. It's God's gift to the Jewish people. Velo netato legoyei ha'arasot, velo enchalto le'ovdei elilim. God did not give it to the nations of the world. He only gave it to us. How proud must we be that we have the prized possession. Shlomo HaMelech obviously was the wisest of all men. Where did he get his wisdom from? He accessed it from Torah. There's a skill, you have to have a knack to it, to access all this information. Simple example. The Gemara in Sotah tells us that the gender of a child, whether he'll be a male or a female, is decided within the first 40 days of conception. And therefore, halakha says you're allowed to pray for a boy or a girl within 40 days. After 40 days, it's decided one way or the other. So the prayer is Tefilat Shav. It's not going to change. It's like a guy standing on the platform waiting for the F train. And the train is pulling into the station. You can't see it. He says, please, Borei Olam, I hope it's the F train. It is what it is. It's not going to change. If it's a Q, it's not going to turn to an F. It's too late for that prayer. Tefilat Shav. So you say, okay, the Gemara says it, the Gemara says it. How did they know? They knew. A few years back, an unreliable source, and I say that clearly, an unreliable source, the New York Times, that is known for making mistakes and lies and exaggerations and bias and slant, wrote an article, and they said that they're just coming to understand, the scientists of our generation, that within the first 60 to 80 days of conception, the gender of the child is decided. And we tell the New York Times, it took you 5,000 years to come up with the number 60, and you're still wrong. Because it's 40. And it'll take them another 5,000 years to come to the Emet. We're patient. You see, we have the answer already. So the world is shocked. And they quote in the article, and based on the Jewish Talmud, they say 40. but it's hard for them to admit the truth. So they'll spend billions of dollars in studies and tests until they come out with the number 40. And when they finally come out with the number 40, we'll tell them, Hazaku Baruch, we knew this already for 5,700 years. You were a little late. And that's on everything. Again, tonight, we don't discuss theories that are unacceptable for Jewish people to believe. For example, the theory of evolution and the Big Bang theory. This we do not discuss tonight, these type of studies. We are discussing tonight, for example, what the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah says, and I quote, Daf Chavtet, Daf Chavhe, Pa'am achat, Nitkashru ha-shamayim ba'abim. One night, it was a cloudy night, V'nir'it demut levana be'ashrim v'tish'a lachodesh. And the moon came out on the 29th of the month. The cycle, the moon. Kaspurim ha'am nomadosh chodesh. So the people said, we see the new moon. Halacha says, if you see the new moon, it's Rosh Chodesh. They went to the Beit Din, they said, we saw the new moon. The Beit Din has to say, Mekudash, Mekudash, Mekudash. And bingo, you have Rosh Chodesh. So, throngs of people came to Rabban Gamliel, the Nasi, and said, Rabbi, we saw the moon. What did Rabban Gamliel say? Impossible! You didn't see the moon. What are you talking about? There's nothing more powerful than witnesses. Two witnesses in our religion, we kill people on the testimony of two people. And here you had hundreds of people, they came to the Rabban Gamliel, we saw what we saw. And the Rabban Gamliel says, Sheker mechazab, you didn't see it. How's he so sure? He says, Kach mekumbelani mebet abi abba. He says, because I have a tradition. And my tradition teaches me, אין חידושה של לבנה פחותה מ-29 יום ומחסה ושני שלישי שעה ו-73 חלקים. He says, my tradition teaches me that the cycle of the moon, it takes 29 and a half days, 2/3 of an hour, and 73 parts of an hour for the cycle of the moon to go around. That time did not pass yet. So you couldn't see the moon. The first sighting of the moon will only come out after 29 and a half days, 2/3 of an hour, and 73 parts of an hour. It's not that time yet. You didn't see the moon. Go home. Come back when you see the moon. That takes a lot of courage and a lot of belief with such accuracy. It's not like he said, it comes out 29 and a half days, give or take. He was giving it to you to the second, to the dot. I say, wow, very impressive. And he was so convinced of his tradition that he told witnesses to go home. Tremendous amount of courage. I mean, he's not an astronomer. Rabban Gamliel didn't work for NASA. He certainly wasn't an astronaut. How then was he so sure that the cycle of the moon is 29 and a half days, 2/3 of an hour, 73 halakim? And then you ask yourselves, well, anybody can throw out a number, the truth is. Sounds impressive. Now I say the moon is 29 and 2/3 of a day and 6/8 of an hour. And 22 halakim. You're going to argue? Okay. So you have to say the Rabban Gamliel must have had Ruach HaKodesh. Or his rabbi, or his rabbi's rabbi. Obviously the number is coming from God. There's no way you can know this. The Rabban Gamliel did not sit in the laboratory all day long with Hubble telescope charting the cycle of the moon. That's obvious. So the tradition came from where? From rabbi to rabbi to rabbi till Matan Torah. That means when Moshe Rabbeinu stood at Har Sinai, not only did he say you can't turn on lights on Shabbat, but he said, Rabotai, the cycle of the moon is 29 and etc., etc. And everybody said, oh, okay. So what we were taking for granted, as Jews, this was pashut to the rabbis. This wasn't a big hadushi. This was like Aleph Bet. Recently, 2 studies were done. One in Houston by a professor called Kerr Sagan, who's the head of a department at NASA on astronomy, and simultaneously a German scientist that also studied the cycle of the moon. And let me tell you their findings. 29 and a half days is 29.5. 2/3 of an hour and 73 halakim, if you convert it into decimals, equals 3059. So the exact cycle of the moon is 29.5, which is 29 and a half days. 29.53059. That was the Ban Gamliel's number. I have a study over here in my hand of both Kerr Sagan's study and the German scientist's study, using technology, using all sorts of equipment. And you know what number they came out with? 29.53058. But it's still wrong. But close enough for me. Ban Gamliel knew that as a matter of fact. Today we just found this out. And when they found this out, it shook the world. Whoa, unbelievable. And they went to the scientists and they said, can we show you Gemara Rosh Hashanah Daf Chafir? Now they have it in an art scroll, the scientists can read it. And they said, wow, amazing, look at that. They knew it. It's the Kelbe right now, the moon's part of the world. The cycle of the moon is a very important part of our religion. We have to know the Chodesh, the holidays. So it's there. Very impressive. That means when you learn the Parashah and the Torah, where God says to Moshe, "Chodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim," and the Midrash says that God taught Moshe the whole cycle of the moon, he gave that equation. And Moshe passed it on to his students, and he passed it on to his students, till the Ban Gamliel, till today that we have it in Gemara. So when we send our children to yeshiva, you say, okay, what are they learning in yeshiva? If we send them to maybe a college, place of higher learning, they learn secular, they learn high-level intellect. Let them open the Gemara. And not only will they learn it, but you'll learn it first before they even invent it. One of the galaxies in the world today is called Palladius. In Hebrew we call it Kima. And all the astronomy books, till recent, said that there are 8 stars in this galaxy. And the truth of it is, when we looked with telescopes at Kima, you saw 8 stars. And anybody that would say 9 stars, say you're a fool. Hey, count them. On a clear night, you can see in Palladius has 8 stars in its galaxy. You can see it with a telescope. It's clear. If somebody told you there's 8.5 stars, you tell them you're crazy. It's 8. What do you have to say 8.5 for? But the Gemara Berachot came along. Again, in a matter of fact piece, Daf Nun Chet Amud Bet, the Gemara said My kima. What is this kima here? What is its stars? Why is it called kima? Amar Shemuel. Shemuel said, it should be pointed out, Shemuel was an authority on astronomy. Shemuel said that he knows the roads of the heaven like he knows the roads of Nehardea, like he knows the roads of Babel. Like you know the roads of Brooklyn. He's first, he's second, he's third, Norwood Avenue, Park Avenue. That's how Shemuel knows the sky. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, he knows everything. To him it was matter of fact. So he says, you know why they call it Kima? Amar Shemuel Keme'a Kuchbeh. Of course, it has about 100 stars in its galaxy. The astronomers laughed. Stick to the books, they told Shemuel. What are you getting involved in a field you don't know anything about? Go back to the Gemara. Go back to Chumash. Go back to giving religious classes. What are you getting involved in galaxies? What a statement. And they use this Gemara to ridicule us and to deride us and to show that the Torah is not emet. They said, Hakamim don't know anything. Look, there's 8. And even the Torah scholars, they say, we see 8. Are you saying there's 100? Kima, Kime'ah. But we didn't know what to answer. Our only answer was, if he said there's about 100, it's got to be 100. How, what? We don't know. Emunat Chachamim, there's 100. A couple of years back, with the invention of Hubble telescope, which is not the regular telescope you buy in Toys R Us. Sophisticated mechanisms cost billions of dollars to make, all electronic. You can see from here all the way to the moon. So they took Hubble's telescope and they took a picture of Kima. And guess what they saw? The reaction was, look, it's about 100 stars in the galaxy. Here's a picture of what Kima looks like to the naked eye. You see the 8 stars. And here's Kima with Hubble telescope. So Shemuel, when it said Kima, is on the money. Again, we told the astronomers, you're a little late. That's okay. You came around. But we knew it first. So if you would have went to college, they would have been telling you for years, 8, in all your books. You would have wrote 8 on every exam. You would have wrote 8. And if you wrote 9, they would have marked it wrong. They would have failed you. You would have been conversing with the greatest scholars on campus. Oh, certainly 8 stars, of course. This would have been the knowledge that you would have been teaching. Lies, sheker. And a young yeshiva man walking in the halls of the yeshiva would be talking to his friend and say, I learned Gemara Berachot today. What did you learn? I learned about Kima, Palladius. Oh, how many stars? Oh, about 100. And he's right. And he has the emet. Because we have the Torah, we have the blueprint. We take it for granted that the earth is round. If anybody would tell you the earth is flat, you'd laugh at him. It's primitive, earth is flat. That's what they believed 500 years ago. But 1492, when Columbus set out on his voyage, he started to accept the theory that the world is round. Galileo also proposed theories that the world is round, and the world wasn't ready to hear Galileo. I said today over in a class that the Inquisition came to Galileo on a tribunal. They wanted to kill him. They said, you're Epikuros. The world is round. This is already accepted fact. The world is flat. And you're coming along now and changing all the yesodot of emunah, saying the world is round. I wanted to kill him. And he said, Rabotai, here's my telescope, here's my facts, read it. They didn't want to read it. They couldn't accept that he was right. Or better, they couldn't accept that they were probably wrong. So they didn't want to read his information. The old Greeks used to say the world was flat and it's being supported by 4 elephants. Yeah, you laugh. But that's what they said. That's what they were teaching in schools. In old Greek schools, that's what the kids came home with. And they would say, and when the elephants sneezed, that was an earthquake. Barbaric, primitive. And if you think about it, if you didn't know the world was round, we'd also say it's flat. It doesn't look round to us. As far as you can see, it's straight. You travel, you don't fall off the world. There are people living on the other side of the world. Now, before a fellow called Newton came along into this world and introduced us with the concept of gravity, it was impossible to believe the world was round. If the world was round, you tell me people living on the other side of the world, they'd fall into space. So, it was correct not to say the world was round. There was no logical reason to say that. There's no gravity. You see the sun rise, you see the sun set. It's straight as far as the eye can see. Recently, in our time, when they were able to fly a little above the earth, and they could take pictures of what the earth looks like from space, it became clear that all the theories of Galileo and Columbus were emet. The world was indeed round. Today that's 1 + 1 = 2. That's accepted. But you wouldn't have claims if somebody 2,500 years ago said it's flat. You'd say, okay, that's a fair mistake. And certainly you wouldn't expect them to say it's round with such conviction, would you? But the Zohar in Sefer Vayikra Daf Yod, if we're allowed to read Zohar, I think this is an understandable piece. I'll read the Zohar, you tell me what the Zohar's opinion was. Zohar, 2,000 years ago, 2,200 years ago, something like that. כל ישובה מתגלגלה בעיגולה ככדור. Phenomenal. Should I give it to you in the Hebrew? כל היישוב, the whole world. מתגלגל בעיגול ככדור, revolves like a kadur. Kadur is a ball. You ever see a square ball? אילן לטאטא ואילן לעילה. There are those that live on top of the ball, those live on the bottom of the wall. So the Zohar has a problem. Because how could people live on the bottom of the ball? The fall. Right, the Zohar will explain. V'chol inun biryan, and those people that live on the other side of the world, mishanyan b'chazuayu. They look different than us. Now, I can't say for sure, but Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai never was in the Far East. He didn't do business in Taiwan. He was never in China. But he's telling you there's Chinese people, they're different than us. The people that live on the other side of the world don't look like we look. They have different features. As you know, and the Zohar says, Mishinuyad Avira. That's interesting in itself. It has to do with the climate, he said. With the air. Kifum kol atar v'atar. V'kaimin b'kiyumayhu. Kish'ar b'nei nasha. And they stand erect. Like everybody else. Newton. He's guilty of plagiarism. Maybe he read the Zohar before he learned about gravity. Big Hakam, he gave gravity. They gave all sorts of Peace Prize awards. He goes down to become one of the greatest men that ever lived in the secular world. The Zohar says it as a matter of fact. Yeah, of course, there's people living in China, and don't get scared, they're standing on earth like you're standing in America, or like they're standing in Babel. And then, the Zohar goes on. Now, you have to appreciate this. When this Zohar came out 2,500 years ago, you can imagine how the world accepted it. I mean, It must have been silly. They must have thought our Hachamim were, who knows what they thought. We're so far from understanding the reality of things. They probably laughed at us and ridiculed us. You know, imagine today, somebody would come along and tell you that the clouds are made up of marshmallows. That's a silly thing. Marshmallows, what are you talking about? It can't be marshmallows. They look like marshmallows, but it can't be marshmallows. You'd laugh, you'd make jokes. That's what it must have sounded like. The world is round. From where? Then he says, Ve'alda it atar b'yeshuba. There are places in the world. Kad nahir le'ilen, hashich le'ilen. It's dark on one side of the world, it's light on the other side of the world. Time zones. Hadush. If the world is flat, there's no such thing as a time zone. The sun goes up on the earth, and the whole world is light, then it goes down, the whole thing is dark. And here we're seeing, they knew already, that there's different time zones in the world. There's dark, there's light at different times. Le'ilen yemama, u'le'ilen nadya. Ve'it atar, there's a place in the world, dechola yemama, all day. Ve'lo ishtakach ben lelyan is not any night, bar b'sha'ata hadar za'ira, only a few moments a year. North Pole. Rabbis were not Eskimos, weren't on the North Pole, but they knew it. There's a place in the world that's dark or light for 6 months a year or 10 months a year. And how do they know this? Where did they get this from? That the world is round, that there's Chinese, that there's gravity, that there's time zone, that there's a North Pole and a South Pole. The Zohar says, Ve'razada. This secret, yes, a secret. Itmesan le'marehom de'chochmetah was given through tradition, through Ruach HaKodesh, to mareh de'chochmetah, to the rabbis, to the scholars. Everything we believe to be true today. Everything's been proven. But the Torah, being the blueprint, said it first. We had it before all of them. It's undoubtedly the Torah must be divine. Torah must be min hashamayim. There's no other way to say it. Who can know these facts? Unless the designer himself, the architect himself. This is a proof that not only is there a creator that must have handed over all his secrets to the world, but once we have these documentations, there's no way we can accept any other theory. The schools today, they teach our children about a Big Bang theory. That the world came about through the series of explosions. In the beginning there was matter. They don't tell you where the matter came from. It was there's a question, and it started to blow up into billions and billions of bombs. As far as I know, bombs usually don't produce positive results. If you have a building and you blow it up, it doesn't turn into a swimming pool with a gazebo and a bar, some lounges. You put another bomb, doesn't tennis court, basketball court. Bombs usually produce negative results. So to come along and sell the world and teach children that that's a theory, it's ludicrous. Imagine, there was a white tablecloth on this table, and I had a cassette of Dior. I had a little jar filled with black ink. And I have a project. I want to spell my name. But I don't want to spell it in an orthodox manner, the conventional manner. I want to take the ink and throw it on the page. And I want one letter at a time. I just need an aleph, Eliyahu. How many times will I have to throw this ink on the white tablecloth to produce an aleph, like we have in the Sefer Torah, beautiful aleph, symmetrical, without any smudges, clear? How many times you pour it? Let's go for argument's sake. 1,000,000? It's too small number. Okay. 100 million times, I'll throw it, and maybe just once it'll land somehow like a perfect aleph. Naniyah. Let's accept that as a fact. Now I need a lamed. Yeah, I gotta put the lamed. So I get another jar of ink. The aleph is there already. Now I need to throw the ink in a way that it'll create the lamed the first shot. Because if I mess up, then the aleph is ruined, then I gotta start from scratch again. What are the odds that I'll throw it the first time and I'll make a lamed? To make an aleph, it took you 100 million times. Now the lamed, you think it's gonna happen on the first shot? Naniyah! It happened on the first shot. Miracle of miracles, bigger than you see out Mitzrayim, this miracle. Now I have a yud. I say, Yud, Rabbi, it's not fair. Yud's an easy one. You do it on the first time. Okay, I'll give you that one also. So now you have Aleph, Lam, and Yud. We're talking symmetrical in the same line, perfect. I need a hair. Hair is very difficult, letter. Because hair has two parts to it. So now the ink has to land in two different areas, not touching. The leg has to be perfect. It's a hard letter to make. Yud is easy. It's difficult. How many times? Without ruining the first three letters. You say, okay, Rabbi, we got the point. It's not going to happen. But they're coming along and telling you that through an explosion, you didn't get Aleph, Lamed, Yud, He, Vav. You got this whole world. You got everything you see, earth, your eyes, the sun, and everything perfect. If the sun was an inch closer to earth, we'd burn. Well, the explosion landed perfect. If the moon was a little closer, there would be flooding. There would be high tide. You wouldn't have any earth. It would be covered with water. Then Hashem, perfect. It landed in the right spot. What are we doing? Rabbi Feinstein held, you have to remove all those theories out of the books before you give it to the children. I remember in the regions that used to be an option for us to take evolution. Evolution is a little different theory. Also hard to understand. That we evolved from apes and monkeys. It's very strange to understand because the theory is saying that we evolved. For example, the original polar bear didn't have white fur. And he was living on the North Pole and was freezing Hazid. He died. And then the next one died, and finally after billions and billions of years, which already should put up a red flag, by the way, because they'll tell you that the world is about between 10 and 15 billion years old. Now, any theory that is already telling you they could be off by 5 billion years, it's a good thing these guys weren't accountants. You know, they come and tell you, about between 8 million and 40 billion in taxes. What kind of number is that? Are you serious about it or you're not serious? You can't give me such numbers like that. So the whole way that they go about it, with, between this, that number, and we accept it. Between 10 and 15 million years old. And they come along and say that mutations happen. So all of a sudden, in Shamayim, or they don't believe in Shamayim, it's easier to believe in Shamayim, by the way. It's easier for me to say that somebody came and built this table. I have no problem with that. That's easy. Than to come and say that there was a bomb and this table came. Even though it's a simple structure. The burden of emunah is on them, not on me. If I see a book, I say there was an author. They say, no, ink fell. What's harder to believe? There's an author. I'm simple. I go home, I sleep in at night. I don't know how they sleep at night. What are they thinking? If you're a businessman, you should love evolution. Because you see that you can sell a customer anything. Because people are buying it. So if you can sell an evolution, you can sell a radio, you can sell them anything, apparel, whatever you have, watches. Customer will buy anything. So the polar bear started to grow hair. And it grew a fur coat, and there you have it. Hence, polar bears today, through millions of mutations of years, today we have, Baruch Hashem, polar bears that are not dying of frigid weather. So, we ask the subscribers to that shita, how come we don't see any more mutations today? I mean, it's very easy to say, oh, it happened years ago, but things are still working according to them. So why don't we see something that started 15 million years ago come out today? Well, based on that theory, are we going to grow third arms now for the computer so we can handle the mouse? Maybe. Wait 15 million years, you'll never know. See, that's a great type of theory. There's no way you'll ever know because nobody could ever live that long. And nobody could ever live long to tell about it, to talk about it. So it's a great theory. You can't disprove it because it's too far away. But based on that theory, if we would go to the Empire State Building tomorrow morning and take 100 million horses, start throwing them off the Empire State Building, eventually the horse will have to adapt and grow wings and fly away. That's what they're saying. That's what happened. Shtuyot. Non-believable. Staggering. Then we talk about the human being, etc., the wonders of the human body, just to say it happened by chance. It has to be a Borei Olam. That's clear. So not only do we believe that there's a Borei Olam, which is Pashut, but tonight we're just proposing and teaching you about the blueprint of that Olam. That is in our custody. We have it. It's called Torah. Remember the story when Avraham Avinu had guests? It was a hot day. It was so hot. Kechom Hayom, the Torah says, and the Midrash writes that Borei Olam hotzi hama min nartika. God took the sun out of its shell. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Perek Yud-Tet, Lashemesh Sam Ohel Bahem, that the sun is in a tent. What does it mean? Tomorrow morning, look at the sun. Or if you can remember this morning what the sun looked like. You see any tents? You see any shell? The sun looks like a fistful, you don't see any shell, like a blizzard. It's a sun, you see a sun, it's a ball, fire, there's no shell. God removed the shell from the sun to make it unbearably hot. Is it mashal, allegorical? Did they mean it? Didn't they mean it? What was David talking? Hashem is Sam oil by him. Again, nobody gets upset. Hachamim were not solar scientists. They didn't have to know this. And it doesn't bother me. They were Torah scholars, but they didn't have to know exactly how the sun worked. I should point out, by the way, that although the Zohar was very clear on the shape of the earth, going back for a moment, I don't want you to get fooled or misled by a Gemara in Pesachim that gives the impression that the world is flat and not round. The Gemara Pesachim compares the world to like a porch, to an achsadra. It's a flat surface. And a lot of people like to use that Gemara as a proof that the Chachamim didn't know what they're talking about. But we knew they knew what they were talking about because the same rabbis that wrote Zohar wrote Gemara. So the Zohar was around. They knew exactly what the Zohar said, that the world is round. So what do they mean in Gemara Pesachim? I'm not going to explain it to you tonight, but I'll tell you what the Gaon of Vilna said. There was a book written by the Moshe Chaim Luzzatto that explains that whole Gemara according to its true meaning, where there's no contradiction. And the Gaon of Vilna said that he was so excited on the day that he received that book that he wore Bigdei Yom Tov. Because this great question regarding the shell of the sun, today they're finding out there are actually three parts of the sun. There's the core, the second layer, and a third layer. We receive the heat from the third layer. The third layer is 6,000 degrees in temperature. By the time it comes down to Earth, on a hot day you'll get 100. If you live in Texas, maybe 130 at most. The core of the sun, the center, is 1.5 million degrees in temperature. And there's all sorts of dangerous poisonous gases in the sun, especially at its core. And if those gases would escape and come down to Earth, you talk about gamma rays and all sorts of radiation. Very dangerous. So what contains that core from escaping? So the solar experts today take it for granted, and they say that in the second part of the sun there's an insulation. It's like a layer. It's like a shell, using their own words. A shell that contains that center and also insulates it, because otherwise it would be too hot. So it serves as a buffer in order to take some of the heat away until the time it gets to the third level, it's only 6,000 degrees. Without that center, without that second insulation, destruction. So now we can start to understand that Hashem is Sam Ohel Bahem. That just indeed there is an Ohel. Nartikad is a shell. God could have removed part of it in order to let out some more heat to make it very hot. Let's continue. It's interesting to point out that I can't give you the exact names of the doctor or the professor, but there was a time in Europe where one of the top college deans had a meeting with many scholars, and they wanted to make it mandatory curriculum that all medical students must be fluent in Hebrew. Today they study Latin. He says, because in those days, 300-400 years ago, the major works on medicine were written in Hebrew by scholars, by Jewish scholars. And therefore, if you wanted to be good at medicine and have a clear knowledge, you had to know Lashon HaKodesh. They never passed it. But the leading doctors at the time were experts in Hebrew. They were probably reading manuscripts of Harambam. And don't take it for granted. There was a doctor that I know you heard of, Dr. Louis Pasteur from France. He was the one that invented the concept of immunization. Without his invention, how many children would have died from all sorts of diseases? What's the concept of immunization? They actually inject in the patient a strand of the disease. Who would think of such a thing? You're trying to cure somebody from polio. So what do? You take a strand of polio and you put it in him. He never had it. What are you making trouble? No, because the body will now fight to create antibodies that will be able to control the weak strand of polio, and then when the major guy comes, when the antibodies are there, they can attack him and kill him. And great hadush. The world is the beneficiaries of this great revelation of the French doctor. Where did he get that from? At the time that Dr. Pasteur lived, there was a doctor, a Jewish doctor, they called him Yisrael Michal Rabinovich. He lived in Paris. And he interpreted the Talmud into French, like we have it today in English. It was the first of its kind. He interpreted the entire Talmud into French. And the Dr. Pasteur got a copy of it. This is written in a book of one of Dr. Pasteur's relatives writing his life story. Saying, my uncle bought the book from the rabbi, and he was a Talmudist, he studied, he was a goy. And he studied the Talmud in French, and when he got to the Gemara Yomah Daf Pedalit, the Gemara says, Mi shenashko kelev shoteh, if somebody was bitten by a wild dog, rabies. So what does the Gemara advise? Ma'achilin oto mechasar kaved shelo. You go feed the patient from a piece of the liver of that dog. Dr. Pasteur came across that Gemara and said, what does this mean? You're going to give the patient part of the infected animal to cure him? And his relative says, he heard testimony from the doctor. It was from this Gemara that opened his eyes up to the concept of immunization. Imagine that. It was in the Gemara. He developed it. He analyzed it. He read it with different eyes maybe than we would see it. But it was there. Today we send our kids when they're 2 years old for shots. You say, Hakamim, they don't know anything about this. They knew it. They were there already. It was invented. There's Gemariyot on it. It's all there. I'll give you one more. There's many. The whole world. Halakha says that Jews are allowed to eat honey that comes from bees. So of course, why not? What's the ingredients? It's honey. It's pure honey. Are you allowed to eat a bee? No, of course not. Bees, not kosher. We have a rule. Kol hayotze min hatameh, tameh. Anything that comes out of something that's tameh is tameh itself. Could we drink camel's milk? Has v'shalom. Why not? It's milk. You're right, but it comes from a camel, and a camel's not kosher. So whatever comes out of a camel is not kosher. Pig's milk the same. But it's only milk. No, it's impossible. Once it's coming from something that's tameh, it has in it part of that animal. There's enzymes, there's fluid in the stomach and the udders. It's not pure milk, it's taking part of the animal with it. Not kosher. So we ask again, how could honey be kosher? It's coming out of a bee. And the bee is not kosher. But there's no rabbi that ever was osir it. Today, they're finding out something very interesting about a bee, a honeybee. That a honeybee has two stomachs. One stomach that it digests food, and another stomach that produces honey. Very interesting. If I would have told you tonight that a bee has no stomachs, you'd also believe me. How big is a bee? They have two stomachs, no less. So the honey stomach, it's a separate kitchen, has a kosher kitchen. Doesn't get involved with anything else the bee eats. So there's no gastric juices being produced in that second stomach. However, the bee does secrete a certain type of sugar, like a glucose, in order to make the honey thick. So there you go, you have a problem. It's not 100% pure honey. It has that element that's secreted into the honey, by the bee in that honey stomach. How do we eat honey then? So the Gemara writes in Bechorot Daf Zayin, Devash devorim mutar, mipnei shemachnisot oto legufan ve'en mematzot oto megufan. In that one line of the Gemara, they were telling us what we are finding today to be true, that miraculously, before the bee spits out the honey, the glucose separates. It uses it to create it, but then separates. So what you're getting is 100% pure honey without any derivative from the bee itself. Imagine that. Would you be so confident to give a psak halakha like that 2,500 years ago? If somebody came to you 2,500 years ago, Hacham, can I have honey from a bee? I don't know, better not to. Like they tell you today. We don't know what's in it, if it's kosher, if it's not, stay away. And we would respect that answer, because how do you expect the Hakam to know that a bee has two stomachs and the glucose separates and doesn't go out? You have to be a Nabi to know this. But the Gemara was very confident, and like nothing. Again, by the way, Devash devarim mutar, devorim mutar, it's kosher. Next subject, what else? It's not going to be kosher. It's kosher. Why? Two stomachs separating, that whole story. Without a doubt. It's clear to them like 1 + 1 = 2. Only today we're finding out to be true. And we say we knew it already. Again, you're late. We were there already. So tonight we accomplished a great thing in that we redefined what Torah is. Torah is not merely laws. Torah is not merely halachot. Certainly that's a vital part of it. The instruction. But it's a blueprint of creation. We have to be proud that we're the bearers or we're the holders of this document. It's all emet. There's no falsehood. There's no sheker. There's not one inaccuracy. Because if there's one inaccuracy, then the book is not emet. Then it's not a truthful book. Then already it puts doubt on every law. Something that is the ultimate truth must be the ultimate truth in every single facet. Because if we find one mistake, then we say if there was a mistake here, maybe there's a mistake there. There's no other document with such precision. There are other documents with gross mistakes. Lahavdil alfei avdalot, the Quran, which is read by millions of Arabs throughout the world. The predominant religion of the world, Islam. And that's the book they read, the Quran. And in the Quran it says that the Jews were in Egypt. They believe that. And they believe that the king of Egypt was Paro. That's clearly. And they say that Paro had advisors. And who's Paro's advisor? Haman. Seems Muhammad was not such a historian. He got mixed up a little. He put Haman 1,000 years before he was conceived. So you might say, okay, it was a slip of the pen, he made a mistake, Muhammad. He was drunk when he wrote that pasuk. Which he probably was anyway. Well, I take that back. Muhammad didn't write, he was illiterate. But 3 or 4 pasukim later, writes the same thing again. And Paro told Haman, take the whole book, put it in Gerizach, that's not next. Mistake, blatant mistake like that, you can't get you trust the book. The authors, we're giving you 29.53058. That's how precise we are. We can tell you the exact time the moon is going to show. They can't even tell you basic alphabet. And the other documents of the other religions are just as inaccurate. Filled with shekarim, filled with lies. So we have the ultimate truth. We must be proud. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we realize that give us the strength and commitment to learn it a little more, to come to more classes, to let the rabbis open up and reveal these secrets to us, these chokhmot to us, so we can share these insights with our families, and Be'ezrat Hashem to lead a truthful life, a life of emet, without having to waste effort and time delving into the falsehoods of creation as taught to us by secular scholars. We must cherish this gift and feel proud that we have it, but it's not enough to feel proud, you have to open it. The architect has blueprints in his hand for the Twin Towers, but if he doesn't open it and construct something, it's a wasted exercise. It's not enough to have the Torah, we must read it. Unless this be an inspiration to motivate ourselves to come a little more to class and to delve into these secrets that a Torah has to offer. ברוך אדוני לעולם, אמן ואמן. רבי חנניה בן הקשיא אומר, לעשה הקדוש ברוך הוא זכות ישראל לפיכך קרבנות שנאמר, אדוני חפש למען צדקו, יחדיר צורה ויאדיר.